Hey guys, well, I decided that I was going to jump on the bandwagon and try one of those burn away cakes. Now, this cake has special meaning to me because that image you see was drawn by my girlfriend, my son's girlfriend, of the two of them together. And I asked her permission to use this for a burn away cake for Valentine's Day, and she said I could do it. So on this one, I'm going to do a combination of the burn away and a new way, well, new to me, way to add gold to your cakes if you don't have an airbrush and there's too many details to go ahead and paint it. But we'll get to that towards the end. But for now, we're going to go ahead and assemble our cake. These are three, I guess you call them 9-inch heart-shaped pancakes. Pancakes. Get it? 9-inch cakes. And normally, if this was for an order, I would simple syrup at this stage in the game. But since it's not, I didn't bother. But that is what I would always do if I was going to serve this to people. But then we're going to go ahead and do a thick and dam. And for the video purposes, I figured since it's Valentine's Day coming up, I would do a chocolate cake with ganache and strawberry preserve filling. So this is a semi-sweet chocolate ganache. You could do any chocolate ganache you want. And I'm just smoothing that. I'm doing a thinner layer of each of the fillings. But to make sure, I went ahead and built up that dam just a little bit more. And here I'm adding in my strawberry preserves. And again, if this were for an order for people to eat, I would make a strawberry filling from scratch. One of my favorite recipes. If I remember, I might add that into the video description. I don't share a lot of recipes, basically because we use a lot of my recipes at the bakery I work at. But my boss says she doesn't really care. I guess I have a conflict of interest with that. I've shared a few, but I haven't shared a whole lot. Maybe someday. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and do our second layer of filling, again with the dammed buttercream around the edge. And I like to go back in and make sure that dam is not coming out by adding a little bit more in and kind of really pushing that dam into the cake at the end there once all of my layers are stacked. I'm going to do the crumb coat with the ganache simply because I had extra ganache. I thought might as well go ahead and use it. And this is actually a butter ganache. So it's a semi-sweet butter ganache. I prefer the butter ganache just because ganache with a cream is good. It's delicious. But it doesn't set up as firm as quickly as butter ganache does. Because what happens to butter when you melt it and then you put it back into the refrigerator? It firms up quick, doesn't it? So the same thing happens when you use a butter ganache on your cakes. Now clean up your board, and I did pop it into the refrigerator for about 10 minutes to firm up. And while that's happening, I'm showing you the image there. See that little heart? Isn't that cute? And she has her little signature at the bottom, which ended up getting cut off in the final cake design. And then this is going to be what is underneath that image. I should have saved that for the end so that it's a surprise. Oh, well, you need to know how to do this. So the image of the two of them, I printed out on wafer paper. And I'm cutting that out into the shape of a heart. And I wanted this to not come all the way to the edge of the cake because you're going to do a border. You need to do a border, a pretty tall border for this burn away cake. And then the image that's underneath is done on the edible sheets, the thicker, like the edible sheets that you get on a cake that has a face on it, somebody's face and image. It's that kind of paper. And of course, they were printed with edible ink and the papers are both edible. Then I'm doing a coat, my final coat in, I guess you call this a final coat, but there's a lot of piping. So the final coat under the piping, I'm just using white buttercream. Since we're going to have a gold finish, you could do a gold buttercream underneath. That would be fine too. You're just going to get kind of a slightly different shade of gold. When you do gold on top of white, it's more of a bright gold. And I didn't want to bother coloring my buttercream, so I just did it that way. And here we have our buttercream cake. And again, put it back into the refrigerator to firm up. And while that's happening, I'm just adding piping gel onto the back of the edible sheet image. I like to attach my edible images of this kind onto fondant. We call it backing it with fondant, just to prevent any bubbling that you might get if you put an image into the refrigerator on just the buttercream. Sometimes you can get a little bit of bubbling and a little bit of rippling. This prevents that. So I attach that to my buttercream just with some shortening. I'm going to do a ring of buttercream around the image. And this is a larger French tip. It has more teeth to it. You could do whatever you want. In hindsight, I kind of wish I had done just a round tip, but it doesn't really matter because for the most part, that's going to be hidden. And I did do 2 layers of it because when you do the burn away, you want to keep your image that's on top far enough away from the image on bottom so that it doesn't melt it or burn it at the same time. So you're going to have to, I had to get creative on how to blend that in because it's pretty tall. And then I put the other image on top of that, just kind of made sure that it was stuck to the buttercream. And I did put this in the refrigerator. Was it overnight? Yeah, it was overnight and the image was fine. I know this is wafer paper and people worry about that, but it was absolutely fine. It didn't warp. Well, maybe just a little bit, but I think that happened just up in the corner where the two, the middle part of the heart, that kind of happened before. So now I brought it back out and then, I did do a rim of buttercream ring. I keep saying rim, whatever you want to call it, around the image on top of it too. Then I'm going back in with a very large French tip, and I did use a petal tip on that bottom. I was trying to kind of build up the surface so that it kind of blended in or made the height of it not so obvious to me. I don't know. That's just how I did that. And then I'm using a 1M tip for the rest of the piping. A 1M, and then I used a round tip also. I can't remember if it was a 3 and a 5 round tip by Wilton because I used 2 different sizes. And this, I was just going for kind of a Baroque, scrolly piping. I wanted there to be a lot of texture, and with the 1M, you get a lot of texture in your piping. And it's the 1M is the same tip you would use to do rosettes on a cake or on cupcakes. So it's the same type of texture. Then I put it in the refrigerator and firmed up before I did this part here. Actually, that is where the overnight part came. I did do all of the piping the night before, and then the next day I came back. And I just covered that image up with some saran wrap to keep it from the color from getting on there. And this is how I'm going to do the gold all over. I saw this on Instagram and I thought that is genius and so simple. Why have we not thought of this before? Not everybody has an airbrush. And can you imagine trying to hand paint all of this texture? So just put your Everclear or your vodka into your spray bottle. You want to make sure it's one that's going to have more of a mist setting to it, a finer mist. I kind of wish mine would have been a little finer than this, but it did work. I did it in 2 rounds. So you just shake it up in the bottle, your luster dust, any metallic that you want, with your Everclear. Now we want it to be thin enough that it will spray out. If it's too thick to spray out, just add a little bit more of your alcohol in there. And then just go ahead and spray it. Look how good that works. It's a little messy on the table and on the board underneath the cake, but since it's so thinned out, it cleaned up really well. It didn't want to stick to the surfaces like sometimes it does with the airbrush. I'm not sure why, just maybe because it's a thinner consistency. I don't know, but it cleaned up really easily. Look at that shine. Absolutely love gold. If you know much about me, you know I love gold. So this one was perfect. And here's our final design, and we're going to go ahead and burn it. And I'm just using matches. You can use a lighter if you want to. Start in the middle, and let's just watch this. I should have left the sound on because it's kind of a soothing burning sound. Oh, I forgot to mention, don't add the paint all the way down on the scroll on the inside because alcohol might catch on fire. I need to add that disclaimer. So here's the final product. I hope you liked it. I hope you give it a try, and happy Valentine's Day.